War has come to the people of Ansalon. Nations are scattered or conquered by the Dragon Lords and their armies of draconic beings. The heroes of the lands proved successful in Zack-Sarath and Pax-Tharkis and gained a small respite. But the shadow of the Queen of Darkness looms, and dangerous adventure is on the horizon. Hail and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I am your host, Liam, aka Himvar. Today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review for Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman's Dragons of Winter Night. Dragons of Winter Night is Book 2 of the Dragonlance Chronicles. I reviewed the first book, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, which you may want to watch first. The second book continues where the first left off, with war, gods, and dragons return to Krynn, but it actually does skip some time, for we brought back to the party delivering the Hammer of Karas to the dwarves of Thorbarden. The adventure of the recovery of the legendary hammer is told in Lost Chronicles Book 1, Dragons of the Dwarven Depths. I found it a little odd, but I could understand why this adventure was skipped for the main series, as the war is to last a long time, and to cover it all they'd either need a lot more books or make each book longer. They went with the former, as these books are just a little longer than your average D&D novel. Keeping this in mind, the story then starts with the refugees of Pax-Tharkis giving the Hammer of Karas to the dwarves of Thorbarden. The mountain dwarf's blessing, the party sets out to the city of Tarsus, a city that has been cut off from the peoples of Solus and Haven since the Cataclysm. But now with the access to the Dwarven Kingdom, this city is now supposedly accessible, assuming that it survived the Cataclysm. A few chapters in, the heroes are separated, similar in fashion to the breaking of the Fellowship in Lord of the Rings. This is slightly spoiled by the back of the book, but it does happen relatively quick, and I will not spoil how it happens. This novel is a little darker and a little more down in the dumps than Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Not everything goes swimmingly, which is fitting and typical for a middle book, when the heroes reach their low point and bad things happen. There are murky woods to traverse, dragon fire to avoid, and ancient artifacts and secrets to be uncovered. In particular, I enjoyed the nuanced nature of the dragon orbs, magical items, and a large focus on the story. While for book divisions and sections, while the first book only had 2 parts called books, Dragons of Winter Night has 3. The second part of the book continues the story with the second half of the party that had been sundered during the first half of the book. This half of the group of friends seem to have had their own adventure in the last month. In the first chapter, we get the details of their dealings in the southern icy lands. We get to see some more of the continent of Ansalon in this book, and I also really love the homages to Tolkien. Overall, Part 2 was fun with a solid conclusion. Part 3 hops around from character to character from both halves of the party, as is common in modern epic fantasy. We get some great time with some favorite characters from the first book. We have a council reminiscent of Elrond's, though more exciting and frustrating. People die, and things are revealed. After finishing this, I wasn't really sure where Book 3 was going to continue and where it would go. I will say that the foreshadowing in Dragons of Winter Night is a bit too bold, since every time it was given I was able to guess what would happen, making some surprises not so surprising. A couple times no foreshadowing was given, particularly there was one big surprise near the end that was quite a shock. This was different than the first book since this story was original and not based off of an actual Dungeons & Dragons sessions. Of characters introduced, Silvaro is my favorite, though she was a little confusing when I guessed her secret. I would have liked to get more of her character, and at some point she kind of just drops off the face of the earth, and this is a little odd, though as far as I'm aware, this is because she is doing things that are involved in a certain Dragonlance adventure or adventure set. I'm not really sure. Maybe someone could fill me in on those details since I'm not really familiar with any Dragonlance adventures. Another character, Derek of the Knights of Salamia, was also very intriguing, and a favorite, sort of how Sadeas from the Stormlight Archive is, which is to say he thinks he's doing what's right and doing what is good, but the reader and our protagonist disagree. Along these lines, Sturm has some interesting parts to play before the book is over. And as I mentioned in my review for Dragons of Autumn Twilight, the writing is not flowery. In fact, it's rather flat. It does stand out a little more in this one, but overall it did make it harder to finish than it should have been. This book should have taken me a couple days, but it took a week. Overall, the story is good. It maintains entertainment while being a little slower than the first book with less action and more world building, and also fewer pages for that matter. I do feel like I'm in the minority liking the first book more. We skip around a lot and there was so much story to tell. I think the authors were just trying to get the book down to D&D novel size rather than typical epic fantasy size. Don't get me wrong, this book does have its moments and I did enjoy it, though it does definitely lack in some aspects. Now it's onward to the completion of the legendary trilogy Dragonlance Chronicles, Dragons of Spring Dawning. Thank you for watching. This has been Liam with Liam's Lyceum, and I'll catch you next time.